question is that this bill be now read a second time, and I give the call to the member for Fisher.
Thanks, Mr Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak in support of the Crimes and Other Legislation Amendment Omnibus No. 1 Bill 2024. Sometimes we debate enormous, transformational and historic pieces of legislation in this place. They top the news headlines for days, weeks and sometimes months. They define elections and determine the future of our nation. Other times, the changes we debate are small but necessary changes. They clean up ambiguities, clarify grey areas and address those, shall we say, small things which create legal nightmares when the rubber hits the road. This bill is one of those latter examples. Simply put, we're introducing minor changes to ensure that our law enforcement agencies have the tools they need to keep pace with the fast-evolving world of digital crime. We need to ensure that there is no room for confusion or misinterpretation in the law. It also allows us to better maintain the integrity of our telecommunication systems. Mr Deputy Speaker, criminals are constantly finding new ways to exploit loopholes in the law, and the rapid advance of technology means that the slow-moving beast of Australian legislation is lagging behind. Law enforcement agencies have identified an increase in criminals' use of digital assets, including cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies, to facilitate their offending. We're talking about drug trafficking, firearm sales and, most heinously, child sexual exploitation. We're talking about money laundering, the financing of terror organisations, ransomware and scams. These technologies are being used in organised crime and some of the most vile kinds of abuses targeting vulnerable Australians. AUSTRAC, or the Australian Transaction Reports and Analysis Centre, is Australia's financial intelligence agency. They are responsible for monitoring financial transactions to identify money laundering, organised crime, tax evasion, welfare fraud and terrorism financing. In their recent report into money laundering in Australia, AUSTRAC said, "Scam methods are constantly evolving. Offenders are becoming increasingly sophisticated in their delivery and execution, and criminal activity can be more difficult to detect and disrupt. Offenders leverage emerging technologies, and it is Australians, their families and their businesses who are paying the price." Mr Deputy Speaker, I don't think a day or at least a week would go by where I don't get approached by someone in my electorate who shares with me their stories. When I was on my tour to Fisher last week, I met a lovely little old lady who was in her 80s, and she had been scammed of her entire life savings. And you know, your heart just breaks, particularly for the older generation, who really, many of them are very, very vulnerable online. And these crooks that make their way through the internet in particular, it just makes my blood boil that so many of these people see particularly older and vulnerable Australians as easy beats. And you know, we collectively in this place as legislators, we need to make it as difficult, as costly as we possibly can for these crooks. In 2023 alone, Australians made 600,000 reports of scams, with aggregate losses of more than $2.7 billion. Businesses, including small and micro businesses, reported losses of $29.5 million to ScamWatch. In fact, money laundering cost Australians over $60 billion a year, with a global cost of as much as $1 trillion a year. Dr Dennis Desmond is a lecturer in cybersecurity at UniSC on the Sunshine Coast. He was a former US FBI agent in the US and has undertaken some important research into the use of blockchain and cryptocurrency in organised crime and terror financing. He said, and I quote, "Despite increased global regulation and enforcement, the use of cryptocurrencies in illicit trade and laundering activities grows each year. A corresponding growth in cybercrime, ransomware, identity fraud and cryptocurrency theft from exchanges feeds the pool of illicit digital proceeds. Recent efforts to reduce crypto laundering activities have been insufficient despite the global implications for terrorism funding and the cost to governments." Close quote. Mr Deputy Speaker, we are simply failing to equip our law enforcement agencies with the legislative tools they need to prevent, disrupt and prosecute this kind of unlawful behaviour and organised crime. As Australia's Parliament, we have a responsibility to close these gaps, to protect Australians and to secure their future. Now, in relation to cryptocurrency, firstly let me touch on the amendments to the Crimes Act and the Proceeds of Crimes Act. These changes will allow our police and anti-corruption agencies to more effectively seize digital assets like cryptocurrency when investigating criminal activity. We've all heard stories of criminals using cryptocurrencies to hide and distribute their ill-gotten gains. This isn't science fiction, nor is it a spy novel. It's happening right now in this country. And it's not a niche issue. Crypto has become a frequent tool in criminal transactions. The laws we're debating right now make it crystal clear that when law enforcement agencies execute a search warrant, they have the authority to access and seize digital warrants and cryptocurrencies they hold. And it's not just crypto. Criminals seek to exploit a whole host of legitimate financial channels, assets and services. As a result, it's important that these laws extend to a range of other digital assets that could hold value. The bill in question allows for that kind of flexibility to ensure that the definition of digital assets keeps pace with the growth of emerging technologies. I also want to touch on the amendments to the Telecommunications Act because I think that these changes need to be explained. The amendments are about ensuring the security of our telecommunications systems and improving oversight. The bill clarifies the roles of the Communications Access Coordinator and creates a new position, the Communications Security Coordinator, within the Department of Home Affairs. The bill doesn't grant any new functions to this new Communications Security Coordinator. Rather, it transfers certain existing functions performed by the Communications Access Coordinator to align the roles with the new administrative arrangements in the government. Now, I'm the first person to point out that creating a new government position or making government bigger doesn't make Australians safer or our country more secure. But where the public is exposed to investigative and law enforcement powers, I believe it's incumbent upon the Parliament, as our chief source of civilian oversight, to legislate protections in the public interest. That's why these laws will streamline information sharing processes while ensuring that our critical communications infrastructure remains secure and protected from malicious actors. They allow oversight bodies for state-based integrity agencies to access intercepted information, thereby enabling them to scrutinise and audit the activities of those agencies that they oversee. This is about transparency and ensuring that agencies are using their powers lawfully and responsibly. It's a safeguard for the public, ensuring that those who are entrusted with significant powers are themselves subject to appropriate and proper oversight. Mr Deputy Speaker, these minor changes are a responsible update to the laws that govern important aspects to our justice system. The bill also ensures that those tasked with keeping us safe are prepared for community safety in the modern age. We simply must get better at empowering law enforcement to protect Australians. I think one of those areas which we are seriously lagging behind is in artificial intelligence and machine learning. I've often talked about the use of AI in defence, particularly in light of the AUKUS arrangement. But artificial intelligence poses...
the member for Fisher to resume his seat. It being 6:30 p.m, the debate is interrupted in accordance with Standing Order 192B. The debate is adjourned and the resumption of the debate will be made in order of the day for the next sitting. The member for Fisher will have leave to continue speaking when the debate is resumed on a future day, and I call the clerk.